For Keeneland Connections, this week we're talking with Phil Needham, and he and his wife consigned Dullahan, the winner of the Toyota Bluegrass Stakes, at the Keeneland September sale in 2010. But before that, let's go back to the dam of this horse you guys bought at the Keeneland November sale.
Well, we bought her, but I still had a piece of her when we took her here to auction. When I had a very successful partnership with Bill Betts, it was Needham Betts Farm in Lexington, and when we dispersed horses to try to help break that partnership up, we decided that she would go in the sale. And I didn't have any preconceived notions really on buying her at the time, but I saw her going through and I thought it was too cheap. And I bid the final bid and ended up with her. It's kind of interesting because normally, having been associated with a lot of mares in the past that are unproven, unraced, and barren, it's not a great way to get started in the broodmare business because it takes more time. You got to get them in foal and make your choices, and then go through that process of enduring the time that it takes. But it makes me look smart now. But at the time, if I was really smart, I would have bought her first baby, Mind That Bird, who became the Derby winner. So I'm not professing in any way to be able to look into the crystal ball as far as knowing what mare to buy. But because I foaled the mare, her mare Aspinall, I always liked her. She was a strong mare and she had a lot of determination. She was unraced because she had an injury that took her out of that capability. But I knew that she had a black type work in that workout before she was going to race, so I knew a little bit about her. And I loved the sire, Smart Strike. I owned a share in Smart Strike, and again, I sold it too early because if I had waited till Curlin came along, I could have made a lot more money. So there's no real guesswork. We just work hard, try to identify horses that we like and we have potential, and breed them to stud fees well within their range of worth at that time. And if they get more valuable as they produce, upgrade that breeding process.
We're talking with Phil Needham for Keeneland Connections, and you and Judy consigned Doulahan to the Keeneland September sale in 2010, and he went for $250,000 as the son of even the score, considerably above the level for his progeny. So what stood out about Doulahan?
Well, he was always an exceptional colt from the day he was born. I mean, he stood up in 15 minutes, nursed on his mother, was a big foal, was a correct foal. He had attributes of being pretty much able to take everything in. He wasn't a horse that got himself ever in much trouble. He was what Judy always called a laid-back colt, but he always grew well, ate well, and had a nice temperament. I knew he would be well-liked at the sale, but I think the reason he was able to bring that high price by even the score was that he was a half-brother to Mind That Bird. But she conceived him before Mind That Bird won the Derby. So at the time, we were just spending the range that we felt was reasonable for that mare.
The mare Minding My Own through Mind That Bird and now Doulahan, does she put a particular stamp on her offspring?
I mean, she certainly has proven that to date, and we just 6 days ago had a beautiful colt by Giant's Causeway. So, she's amazing. I mean, she's the one that's done it, really. I haven't done it. I've made a few choices for her, but it's incredible why her attributes are able to translate into horses that like to run like that. I mean, I started buying horses early in my career, thinking I could buy distance horses and breed to sprinters. I brought some mares from Germany to breed to the American sprinters. And, that's a long process, and it didn't really work commercially. So you end up making certain decisions that work out well for you because you are trying to make a living, of course.
Absolutely. Doulahan and Ken DeSormo, the rider, talked about the way the horse had grown from 2 to 3 when he was talking in the post-race interviews at Keeneland after the Toyota Bluegrass. He talked about there being a lot more distance between his ankles. Was this horse particularly large from day one? Was he bigger than most of the other foals?
He was larger than most. He was about 140 pounds at birth, and he was a little larger, but he didn't really have the fullness of frame. I think when we sold him, he was he had that. And then once he got into training, he seemed to drop off in his weight a little bit. But then, of course, as they mature, yeah, I think he's a little different horse than he was as a 2-year-old. He was trying to figure out the game as a 2-year-old, and now I think he's learned it. But he still needs some direction from the jockeys.
What do you remember about that sale in 2010 at Keeneland when he was drawing the interest? Ultimately, sold for $250,000. But what was the interest like that week, and what was that experience like for you?
Well, it was a very positive experience because he was well liked because he was such a good-looking horse, and the Mind That Bird part of the family probably further intrigued the buyers to take a look at him. And then he had several heart scans and several scopes. And, you know, when they had that kind of activity, you kind of feel like there's more than one buyer out there interested in this horse. And, of course, it takes more than one to jack the prices up. But we were quite content to, although we don't race many, we were quite content to keep the horse very close to that price that he finally sold for. My reserve, just between you and I and whoever else might listen, was $249.
Wow.
Yeah. And Jerry Crawford said later that was their final bid. So had he not bid that amount, we would have ended up keeping him.
Interesting. Tell us about your operation over in Scott County.
Well, I presently, since I left partnership with Bill, am boarding my horses at Amelia Fojon's place called Bonatera. And it's about a mile away from where we live. So it works out well because we visit with our horses and feed them carrots almost daily. And Judy, my wife, is very involved. She's been involved since her early years. She rode horses, and she and I met when she was my riding instructor at a university, trying to increase my talents show jumping. So, I mean, we've been involved with it for a long, long time. And we just worked hard at it and had some very good fortune.
Well, congratulations on the success with Doulahan, and enjoy the ride this spring.
Thanks very, very much.